The reason why I don't use a smartphone is because the social contract right now is being broken. Right? Edward Snowden, who decided to do his expose on the NSA, the National Security Agency in America, came to Hong Kong, right? And when he did this, he stayed at the Mirror Hotel just down the road. And so we're seeing right now that secrets are no longer secrets. Right? What you thought was private may no longer be private. And bad ideas and good ideas propagate around the world at the speed of light. Now, we began this evening with, it wouldn't be quite called a prayer, but we observed the problems in several countries, most recently in Paris. Now, that information in Paris would have taken months, a few hundred years ago, to propagate, and yet we all feel part of that dialogue. All the injustice in the world right now that we see in our nightly news and we read in the nightly papers, terrorists here and there, are all washing up our shores at the same time and causing this global, very chaotic discussion. All the people who are our leaders are failing us because they don't know that the game has changed. Just like people who talk this evening, who cares who sits on the high table? Oh, I'm on the high table, right? Why? Because you can now communicate directly, peer-to-peer, with the person in front of you. You don't have to wait for permission. In fact, when we began this evening, I noted that a few of you sat down before even being told to sit down, and that's fantastic. Because we're going into what's called a permissionless culture. We don't have to wait for permission. In my day, we did. Now, I dropped out of Hong Kong UST. I was a Sir fellow and all of that. And I was a pretty good student, or thought I was so as an academic. And there were two great moments in my life. The day I was born, and the day I found out why. And the day I found out why was when I was 23, actually. How many of you are under 23? Okay, so now I can say that before you were born, I helped introduce the internet to Hong Kong. And the moment for me that, I had this thing, I dropped out of university, my PhD, was when I found my passion. When I got the computer in Hong Kong to talk to a computer in Antarctica. And for some reason I thought that this was absolutely amazing tech. And so I dropped out of university and I went on this whole internet route. And that led me to all these wild things right now, which is right now Bitcoin, which is going to change the way we view money. Because the way we view money now is, again, it's not permissioned by banks or central banks. And if you think about that, if you think about the problems or the issues that you're facing right now, where people see the rules and they don't respect them, or they don't think they make sense, or they think they're stupid, right? That's exactly how I felt when I was doing the internet, because why should you have to pay all these international fees to make an international phone call? Right now, those of you who use Google Hangout, Skype, you have international phone calls for free. Right? Relatively speaking. That was a big game changer. So the big thing right now is that the financial system, now how many of you want to go into banking because that's where you think the money is? Come on, raise your hands, be honest. Finance? In Hong Kong we have this morning we have this new Secretary for Innovation and Technology. So what I would like to do is try to weave that in with this whole internet governance debate. An internet governance debate is the problem with stories. Right, we believe that we're from the 37 different nationalities present in this room. So what is the concept of a nation state? Right? When you get on a plane, when you look down, you fly, do you see those colored landmarks? Do you see those borders that exist in your map? You don't, do you? Because they don't exist. Again, they're these stories, they're these narratives. Now, we heard just a moment ago about the Red Army. Well, I say in terms of the internet governance, the way I try to characterize it, some people will believe cyber war is inevitable. I don't. Right? Xi Jinping, when he met with Obama, they said this thing that will not do commercial spying. And yet right now, a lot of our infrastructure relies on the internet, where we can basically, the internet itself has been weaponized. Your data, or what you think is your private data, is now liberally shared with who knows what, or who knows who. And so what this means is, my blood is red, and so is yours. And so the stories that we have in terms of I'm from this nation state is actually causing us problems right now. Because the internet sees no borders, and yet all of global politics is defined on nation states, right? United Nations. And a country can range from less than 100 people to over 1 billion people. So how can you have a sensible discussion when a group has a few hundred people and another group represents 1 billion people? You can't. And so right now, this fundamental friction between geography, where we are born or what country we think we belong to, and topology, the network itself, which doesn't see these borders, over the last 20 years has caused this huge discussion on what do we really mean about societal control. When we have, in the olden days, the rule of law, we would agree to abide by the rule of law, otherwise you get thrown in jail or you'd be fined, right? Well, it makes no sense to put a computer into jail. It makes no sense to find someone who's not even in your country. And so the old rules of nation states and rules of law are now given over to another set of rules, which is the rule of code or the rule of algorithms. Right? Your smartphone might spy on you, and you have no choice because you have to use it or you turn it on. And that's a very different way of organizing society. So what we said in the commission in April is this year is the 800th anniversary of the Magna Carta. Right? So some of us have been saying that we need a new social contract. We need a new Magna Data, because again, the rules are no longer applying. So when you don't see the rules, or you see the rules and you don't want to disrespect them, or you think you're stupid, or they're stupid and they're not relevant anymore, then what do you do? Well, very interestingly, when we began this evening's discussion, most of you didn't close your eyes. How many of you actually closed your eyes when asked to? Okay. And how many of you didn't? I did. Right. And the reason why this is important is because you have to think about, if society is to function, there have to be some common rules. And if we don't have those common rules, when we are now communicating across the border with terrorists all over the world can communicate by themselves, and everyone who wants to try and stop them can't stop them, then we have a huge tension. We have a huge potential for conflict. Because the internet enables, in the old days, you can't divorce your neighbor, right? Japan's next to South Korea, which is next to China, and that's been the same for hundreds of years. But on the internet, everyone's your neighbor. And so we're having huge societal clashes of cultures, clashes of civilizations, all at the same time. And it's a real interesting challenge. But how is that relevant to you sitting there in your seats right now? Well, I would say you actually have a very similar problem. You also have a governance challenge within Hong Kong U, which is how do you govern when networks, communication networks like the internet, collapse hierarchies? Right? Traditional management structures has a top, a high table, when most of the people, the 99%, are all on the floor. And when you decide that you're not going to listen to the people on the high table, you're not going to listen to the rules, and just carry on your conversation, that is absolutely fine. And that's exactly emblematic of the challenge we have right now. Because you don't have to listen to us. You can have a direct, private conversation, peer-to-peer. So what this means is that the future is going to be very decentralized. There is going to be no center. There's going to be no hierarchy. And that's going to have a huge social change. The governance structures within Hong Kong U clearly not working. Governance structures even within wider society not working. Why? Because they can't deliver the benefits of that kind of organization when the people that you're governing don't listen to you. Why don't they listen to you? Because you're better informed. You're better educated. You don't need to listen to them. You can communicate directly. So one of the fundamental systems that remains is the financial system. You need so-called money, or you think you need money, as a form of disintermediated trust, to build trust within each other, right? You need a job, right? I mean, how many of you are going to graduate and the first thing you're going to do is get a job, right? Most of you. Why do you want to get a job? Well, because you need money. Well, why do you need money? Well, to function as a society. But the internet's changing that, because we're moving from a society where in the old days there was a lot of scarcity, to one where it's all about access, not ownership. Right? So examples of the startups like Uber, right? You don't have to actually own a car, right? You just share a car. You have these shared office spaces. You have these new startups. These are symptoms, because right now when you have a communication network that reduces the cost of communicating and synchronizing, you can scale. So nowadays you can have, you can broadcast yourself globally with Google Hangout Studio or whatever it's called. And what this means is that the unit of efficiency, or the minimal viable size for a corporation, is much smaller. You don't need to be a multinational anymore. The minimal size for you to get organized as a club, either Tai Chi or whatever, is much smaller. Because it's so easy to organize yourself right now. When it's so easy to organize, things fragment. They cluster. And that's what I think is happening right now. With a lot of our organizational management structures, both within government and society, they're no longer working. So what's the opportunity for you, and why should you care? Because when you leave Hong Kong, you're going to go into the wider society. Some of you will just start up, some of you won't, some of you go into mainstream. But I would like you to keep with this in your mind, because what's actually valuable right now is due respect to the high table. Not necessarily the education that you're going to get here, that's very valuable. Make no mistake about that. What is valuable is the social networks that you're forming, the peers that you're forming right there, the people sitting beside you who you self-selected. Because that's your cluster, that's your group, that's your network. And in the future, the whole thing is about networks. How you form networks, how you manage networks, and a not hierarchical structure, where the only thing that motivates people is their self-motivation, because they're not going to listen to you because you are the boss. They're going to listen to you because they want to listen to you. They're going to act because they believe in what you're saying or what you're doing. And what that means is we're talking increasingly about passion and not money. We're talking about mission, not market share. So as my own passion, which was the internet, what I can share with you is a poem. Because this is, we can tell the pioneers, because we're the ones with arrows in our backs. And when you pull those arrows out, it hurts. But if you want to innovate, and we have a new Innovation and Technology Bureau as of today, you're going to have to break rules. Now I hope that you break those rules on purpose, because not by accident. Why? Because you have to see the rules there before you break them. That, in many ways, is what it means to innovate. I'm very frustrated. I look at the world and why? And I also look at the world and say, why not? So to innovate, you have to look at the world and say, you know, that's stupid, or that doesn't work. Why is it like that way? And you actually have to believe that you can change it. That's the passion. The skills that you're learning, the network that you're establishing through this is incredibly valuable, perhaps more so than the education itself. But as you go out into society, what I'd like to do in closing is share a very private, not a mantra, it's actually a poem. Because when you innovate, there are 100 people who tell you that things can't be done. There are 1,000 people who tell you why it shouldn't be done. And there'll be one person who might believe in you, and that one person has to be yourself. So the poem that I've been using for the last 20 years, I'll share with you privately this evening, and it goes something like this. Out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole, I thank whatever gods there be for my unconquerable soul. In the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried aloud. Under the bludgeonings of chance, my head is bloodied, but unbound. Beyond this place of wrath and tears looms but the horror of the shade, and yet the menace of the years finds and shall find me unafraid. It matters not how charged the scroll, I am the captain of my fate. I am the master of my soul. Thank you very much.